Welcome to the Cameo Renee podcast. This is a place for those who refuse to sit back and wait for life to unfold. If you're ready to break free from the slow lane and seize every opportunity, you're in the right place. We're all about taking action, making shit happen, and creating the life you desire. Join me as we dive into powerful conversations and strategies that will help you grow your mindset and chase your dreams. Welcome back to the Cameo Renee podcast. Thank you, or welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to have this guest because we have been on, I feel like, this journey together. And she's not just somebody who I work with often in business, but a friend. And so I'm really, really excited to jump in and for you guys to get to know her more. So let's get to it.
Yay.
I did a little bit of introducing, but Sam, if you could introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I can totally do that. I'm Sam, and I'm Samantha Long. My business is Aligned Heart Yoga and Self-Care, and I am a yoga instructor and also a somatic self-care coach. So essentially what that means is, I started to practice yoga, 15 years ago at this point. Eventually, after having children and leaving the corporate world, became a yoga instructor because yoga was always so supportive for me, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally. And I wanted to know why. And so hence my dipping my toes further and further into why is this from a body perspective, so helpful in so many ways, more than just the physical. And so hence somatics comes in, which is essentially any type of self-care and healing that is body-based. It is body in nature. Soma means body in Latin. So not only do I coach women specifically on prioritizing their self-care, but we take it into the internal experience. We can live up in our head. We already do that. That's already happening, right? Right? That's already happening. We don't need to stay up here. I would like to offer you some practices and tools to ground you and get you into your body. And then I want to know what's going on internally, because that's really where the good stuff lives.
Yeah.
What excites you, what turns you off, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where the coaching comes in, because that experience is unique in that way.
I don't know if it's too early, but can we do the grounding?
Totally.
While we're sitting, and for the people who aren't seeing us, talk through what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
Yes. I as us teachers call it, I over cue as it is. So honestly, you can, because I'm a talker. So you could definitely not be seeing me and you'll still get it. So yeah. And so you'll be my student, but also listeners, please feel free to join in. Make yourself comfortable. I know it sounds so cliche, right? Make yourself comfortable, but literally shift your body around, whether you are standing, whether you are seated, whether there's, a chair or something else underneath you, or whether the ground is beneath your feet. It doesn't matter. Just simply coming into awareness with was I even in a position that was, what can I do to make myself really comfortable and make it easier on the body. And then you can kind of wiggle into your seat. Or your feet, right? So you could either wiggle your toes if you're standing up, or you can just kind of notice the space where your bottom meets your foundation, what's underneath you, the seat or whatever it is. If you are driving, by the way, and you are listening to this, don't close your eyes. But if you would like to close your eyes, you can. These are all invitations, right? That's another piece of this, is that we don't have to do anything that doesn't feel comfortable. If you would rather just kind of look down softly, you could do that. Notice your breath, right? Without judging it, without trying to change it too quickly. Just kind of notice if you can shift your breath in and out through your nose. We get the most oxygen absorption when we can do that nasal breathing. So we just kind of check in there. out through the nose. And so as you continue doing that, you just let the weight of your body settle a little bit more into what's beneath you as you exhale. So we always have that ability, wherever we are, use your exhale as an opportunity to settle, right? And to feel whatever's beneath you, because when you notice that you are grounded, that you are connected to something, the body will automatically be able to decipher that it's safe, right? So when we talk about anxiety, for example, that so many of us struggle with, that is, I'm not safe, right? And it could be actually in the physical environment where we are actually at, or it's just a feeling that comes from the body and moves up towards the brain that says, this is not okay. I can't trust this. So the more we do these little simple grounding exercises, we can do, that took what, like a couple minutes.
And I immediately, it's funny, like you don't even think of it. Like as soon as I like let out the breath, my body kind of just like,
yeah.
oh,
You want to know why?
Why? Tell me.
So like your inhale, I should start with, is essentially an activation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I love, like, I get geeky with a lot of things, but I am a geek. But, like your inhale is like you're inspiring. You can think about that, right? Like it's actually a sympathetic response in your nervous system, which means we associate that sympathetic response in your nervous system. You've heard of it as fight or flight. But we actually need healthy sympathetic response to just function, just to take action, move forward, breathe, move the body, all of that. So that's that piece. But your exhale and why you felt that sort of calmness come over you. Some people experience either like kind of like a chill, like where it feels like a warm blanket over you, or even a yawn will come through eventually, because your parasympathetic nervous system is connected to your exhale. So one of the tools that you could always use is to just focus on the exhale. The inhale is going to come in by itself. It's totally involuntary. As long as you're alive and,
Hopefully breathing.
That inhale is going to come in by itself. The exhale will always bring you into the parasympathetic if you're intentional with it, which is opposite of fight or flight, rest and digest. So, and I know that's like, again, you've probably heard that phrase, but just think of it as your recovery zone. Like, in other words, yes, I can be activated, and regulation isn't about just staying calm all the time. Like, we have to just get out of that. You're not going to be calm. You don't have to be calm all the time. You just have to be able to more easily come back to recover from whatever that.
Calm all the time.
I know. Like,
I love
keep
that.
it. No. No. And here's the thing, because I mentioned anxiety. So I just figured I would come back to that for a moment. Like, people think that the opposite of anxiety is calm, but it's not. It's trust and it's safety.
Wow.
So like you're chasing calm. We got to stop chasing calm. That's not what it is. You want to chase being able to trust yourself and to trust the moment and to feel safe.
Wow.
There's so much that can come out of that grounded state. We can have clarity, just like mental clarity, right? When you have brain fog or you feel like, ADHD symptoms like I, struggle with.
Guilty.
Right? Like the clarity will come when we can kind of heal our nervous system a little bit and make it easier for us to regulate. And there are plenty of really simple tools to get you there, honestly.
How did you get into this, and how did you learn all this?
Oh, yeah. So I have a lot of amazing mentors over the years, but I've always been, like I said, a geek. So I want to know why of everything, right? Yeah. So when I realized, specifically, I went through a really hard time because I got laid off from my career in publishing. That was about a 12-year-long career before I had my kids, when I was 8 months pregnant with my daughter, which
Wow.
So at the same time, I was laid off, surprised, somewhat out of nowhere, and became a new mom at the same time. So it was a really just turbulent period of time. And my yoga practice really supported me. And that was a moment for me where I realized something is real. This is beyond, and yeah, of course, this is a 4, 5, 8,000-year-old, depending on who's talking, practice of yoga, right? And it's more than just the physical. We know that it's a very broad practice that spans spiritual, emotional, all of it. But I specifically get geeky about the science, right? I just want to know why. And then I like to put pieces together, right? So that's when my, little spidey sense went off, and I started reading and watching a lot of trainings and, YouTube University at first, right? Then I went on to do a trauma-informed training. So basically, yoga for mental health and addiction, trauma-informed yoga through Kula for Karma, which is an amazing organization. They're actually local in Bergen County, and they send yoga teachers into jails and rehabilitation centers.
Wow.
So I got the opportunity to take advantage of their training that they actually offer to those yoga instructors, which of course just more light bulbs going off in this, 25-hour training. And I'm like, I have to go deeper. And I eventually found the optimal advanced yoga training, which had a trauma and mental health focus, essentially, with a dual certification in somatic breath work and somatic movement. So it was going to be one training or another. Oh, I spent so long in that freeze state of there are so many, fully overwhelmed with how to find what was going to teach me ideally, right? But then I found Katie over at Tula Yoga and Healing. She's out of Florida. And that was that training, that 300-hour advanced training through yoga that included all of this juicy information. And then I became a trauma geek. And
how could you not after that?
Right. Yeah. It's so, right. The big T word that is such a buzzword right now that you almost, I know some people are like, oh, I'm so tired of this. And it doesn't have to be this very cathartic and deep and painful experience to explore your trauma. I mean, I really want people to know that. I had a session this morning, right, where there tears, with a client, where there are tears, yes, but it's so many of us think that once that Pandora's box is open, it will just never stop, right? And it's just going to be this, full potential re-traumatization, and it's so hard and all of that. But when you bring in and you ground yourself with these resources, it doesn't have to be that type of experience. So yeah, now, I don't market myself, so to speak, as a trauma coach, but there is absolutely that piece that has to come into play, because when we're healing our nervous system, you're unraveling as a byproduct of that. You are unraveling from trauma that's living in your body that needs to release.
Yeah.
It needs to come out.
Yeah. So what would you say your title, your full, if somebody came to you and asked, what do you do?
Yeah.
What is your...
I normally say I'm a somatic self-care coach.
Okay.
And because my business has evolved, right?
Yeah.
And I was just talking about this because one of my clients was just saying how it's really hard, it was funny because she was like, I don't know, maybe I need therapy for this, but I can't seem to prioritize my self-care. And I just started chuckling inside, because how I began, as you know, was really just as a self-care coach for moms, because I am a mom and I understand the experience and the struggles and everything.
Space.
So so much of that was simply as a woman and as a mother, it is so damn hard to prioritize yourself, period.
Yes.
And not just put everybody else's, solely everybody else's needs, above your own. So hence the evolution, right? Once this part of healing needed to be so insistently needed to present itself as a part of what I do with people, just adding on the somatic to the self-care coach, right? And now I still work with women, exclusively, essentially. And I get asked all the time, why don't you work with men? And I'm like, because that's a separate beast.
Yeah.
It is 100% also a beast, but
It's important, but it's
so
just
important.
different.
It's different. And like, I think that's coming. That will eventually come. Like I said to my friend earlier today, I was like, one day I will partner with a male colleague in wellness, and I will also work with men.
Sorry,
But
the shoes are coming off. We spoke about this before the
get comfortable.
The interview.
As I said, hence my zigzag seat that I will just see. I knew it. I knew that I was going to be bumping things. But yes, so now I've lost track of where we were.
I know. I was like, okay. My ADD was like, oh, I need this.
I know. We go, wee.
Okay, so coming back, we were talking about men and how it's just so different and how you're not in that realm yet, but you want to be.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, like, with women, like, let's talk women first, and then we'll go to men. Okay. So, like, because that's who I actually work with almost exclusively, right? So, again, it's its own beast. And most of it is exactly what we just said. Even if we don't have children as women, we are the caregivers of our society.
Mm-hmm.
We are not only the caregivers, but I'll go ahead and say it, we are the healers. Mm-hmm. That's why we're so sensitive. That's why we're so highly intuitive. That's why historically we've been called, you know, crazy bitches and hormonal, like hormonal took on like a negative connotation.
Yeah. Like, when did that happen?
Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like that I have hormones. Like, you know, men do too. What's happening here? And there's so much we can go into that makes it a completely different beast, right? But it doesn't matter because there is a bridging gap, and the bridging gap is suppression of emotion. So if a woman, there is just a different outcome. Men have been taught to suppress their emotions just as women have. Mm-hmm. In this society, it, like we just said, hormonal and emotional and sensitive took on negative connotation because of a lot of things, because of sort of like a patriarchal approach to our society. Yeah. Everything is black and white. It gets too sticky and icky with emotion, too complicated, a little too much knowledge there, a little too much power when you really eventually connect to it.
My last podcast with Dr. Jafar, she's a female doctor, and she said studies actually show that you will live longer if you have a female doctor.
Damn. That's big.
I said, oh my, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's because I feel that we have that part of us, and because we care, because we're emotional, because we go that extra mile, we're caretakers.
This reminds me of another study that I was just reading about. I think it was about therapists specifically. So not doctors, but therapists, and how when they were like studying their brains or something, or like tracking their brains like in session, and the differentiating fact of whether the client felt real results after the session had nothing to do with like the tools or the modality, or like, in other words, whether it was CBD or like another form of therapy or coaching or whatever it is. It was, the biggest thing was whether or not the therapist or practitioner on the other side from the client was listening, was really engaged, right? And they felt, therefore, seen and heard. Mm-hmm. So this is a thing. This is a feminine gift, and blessing and a curse, right? Because on one side, we're highly intuitive as far as other people's emotional state. On the other side, if that gets distorted through trauma, we are going to be hyper vigilant about everybody else's emotional state. And so therefore the codependency comes in where we can't even like deal with someone being upset.
That's a big word. Can we just pause there and go over? Yeah. Can you explain to the listeners, what is codependency?
Yeah. So essentially, codependency is when my emotional state is dependent on your emotional state. So this is passed down, and it's also learned. It's both. And it's also based on what's modeled for us, right?
Yeah.
So I don't, as we said, I don't have a problem getting vulnerable and showing my side of the story. I mean, I come from a completely codependent household where my mother was not only already that way, but also forced to be like the more of the masculine figure in the house because my father was an alcoholic and continues to struggle with this to this day. So, in other words, the point is that it's learned, obviously, because as women, we are all, whether it's directly or it's subtle cues or somewhere in between, we really are taught that we have to tiptoe around everyone else's experience. We have to be nice. We have to put people at ease. We can't rock the boat.
Be a good girl.
So be a good girl.
Yeah.
It's the good girl persona, 100%. So that means, what that literally means is that the other person's experience in this world is more important than your own. That's what's learned. And so it's learned by those subtle messages. And then it's also modeled from your mother or just your authority figures, whoever your people are, right, growing up. So it's important when we notice, because I know that, I notice this happens with my clients. We start talking about concepts like that. They get really emotional. And then it becomes, like something that they now want to just fix about themselves so desperately. So it's really not the best direction to go in, because really you can only work with the tools you were given. Even your parents could only have worked with the tools they were given. It's okay to be angry with them for not seeking out new tools. But you have that realization, and then it's important to not move into shame around it. Because if you've ever like really sat in that of like, there's something wrong with me, like that feeling, that's what shame is, right? There's something wrong with me.
Space to be.
So dangerous. Such a slippery slope. And also no productive good and growth will ever come out of that space. Ever. It's only going deeper. So it's love. It's love. Love is all we need.
All we need.
So easy, right?
So true.
Oh, it's so easy. Make it sound so easy. I know.
So what can somebody do then who's in that codependent state to like get out of it?
So you have these patterns, right? We have to notice our patterns. We have to notice. I'm like a broken record with my clients and even with my yoga students, because even when I'm teaching a class, that word notice comes up all the time, because I just want you to notice your internal experience. So if you're listening to this, or say you were in a coaching session or a therapy session and this comes up and you're like, that's it, that's what I need to work on. Notice when there's a pattern that's happening that's literally acting out in your day-to-day life or in your relationships, more likely than not, right? Relationships are everything. They're going to hold up a mirror to you, and it's going to be those interactions in your experiences or hard conversations or arguments or whatever are going to be an opportunity every time to notice when you're in the midst of a maladaptive pattern, right? And it, again, I can say it, doing it is a different story, right? But your level of self-awareness is going to be key here, because then you'll notice not only when it's happening, but what your internal experience is when it's happening. And give yourself a lot of time and space to kind of not necessarily like dwell there, but see where you're triggered and how you can be, your triggers are your teacher. That is 100% a truth. And we can't go into shame like, oh, I'm in that moment and now not only, or say, for example, I'm prioritizing somebody else's experience, or I'm putting my own self-care to the side and I'm making sure that everybody else is taken care of first. Those are things that can come up, but it also comes up in like way more insidious ways. Women, men, it doesn't matter who you are, you can become really manipulative because you're trying to get the other person to have an optimal experience, or like it for it to just work out in any way.
Yeah, that was so me when I was younger.
Right.
So me.
Right.
Totally just trying to manipulate the situation, not even just like the person, but just manipulating the situation for the best outcome instead of just letting it be. Just letting it be.
Always having an answer, right? Always having to have an answer. Always having to have the last word. there are a lot of ways that can, in other words, codependency and generally, we could say codependency, but it's just period. Can we notice and live by our own internal experience, communicate our needs, set boundaries accordingly? Then that codependency piece falls away if we could just do that, right? But again, if we have that piece still deeply inside of us, especially as women, it could be really hard to even open your throat and say the words.
Yeah.
Those are really awkward conversations when you start to become aware of things. But there are words to use. There's language to use. And it's just like anything else. You do something that is uncomfortable and hard. You do it anyway. And then you have then proven, ideally, to your nervous system, to your soul, to your spirit, I'm still safe. I did that really hard thing and I was still safe. I was fine. It was uncomfortable, but discomfort doesn't equate to not safe. That's another thing we were taught, that we kind of like unfortunately live by sometimes. Just avoiding all levels of discomfort, just dodging discomfort. Like
100%.
Like it's our job.
I feel like that's so relevant right now.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So relevant where it's like, oh, I have to do something that like I might not be good at.
Yeah.
Or something that I'm not 100% at.
Yes.
That's so, again, dangerous to be in that zone because it's like, well, how are you supposed to get better? Or how are you supposed to do anything? You don't, in order to learn something, you have to not know it first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
where do you think we begin? We're not born with these skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I love that your practice is based on this of just learning, what you're triggered. So you're from your trauma. And that is such a buzzword where we have like that negative thought process when we hear that word, but it's so important to acknowledge it. What else do you work with your clients? Like what do you, besides this now, what are some other things that people can learn from having you as their coach?
Yeah. So like outcomes, right? Like what are we shooting for when we are trying to unravel from like these patterns and there's the old ways and noticing our body and noticing our internal experience, right? So that's why it ends up being like a pretty broad spectrum of goals and intentions with the work, right? Because it could be anywhere from wanting to improve relationships. That's like a big one. Whether it's with your partner, and a lot, because I work with women and because a lot of them are moms, it ends up being how to deal with your kids, how to not lose your shit.
That's so hard.
Your kids. And I laugh because I'm like, should I be even speaking about this right now? But you know how you have the medicine sometimes, and like,
yep,
but you sometimes
doesn't
you can't
mean you're
give
perfect.
It doesn't mean sometimes you take your own medicine.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm working on it, and it's been literally one of the biggest struggles, right? Is because again, it's all about patterns and what was modeled for you and just like what's in you. So like, yeah, when you're triggered by your kid's behavior, if you don't have that quote, geek quote, window of tolerance where you have the ability, because you're in the process of healing your nervous system, where you have the ability to pause.
That pause.
So hard.
So hard.
So hard.
It's so hard.
And so like relationships, right? Like, so that's your relationship with your kids. The same thing obviously applies with your relationship with your partner, because everything is relationships.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about business, then it's your relationship with your clients.
With your business. Yeah.
Yeah. And with your, exactly. Like with your offering, like, am I good enough? Am I qualified? The whole imposter syndrome, right? What's the imposter syndrome? The imposter syndrome is I'm not good enough. That's a story.
I literally had somebody ask me the other night. It was so cute. She's a yoga instructor and she's just starting on her journey. And she looks at me and she goes, is it is it normal? Like, I heard this thing called imposter syndrome. Is it normal to feel that way when you're starting a business? And I just giggled and laughed, and I looked at her and I said, I would be worried if you didn't feel that at some point. Like,
That's like
you,
sociopathy. If you
yeah,
don't feel
if
it.
you
No, I'm
don't,
kidding.
I was just like, every single entrepreneur
Oh my
at some
God.
point feels this way.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that it's okay, it's normal, and you will get past it.
Yeah.
But you need to do the work.
Yeah. 100%. And it's that noticing, right? Like what and pause. If it's me we're talking about, right? It comes on, the imposter syndrome, and then it subsides, and then it comes on again.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is that every time you put yourself out there, and you might fail.
Yep.
Like, our event, which we should talk about, right? Like our event that women's event that we just did. I mean, I would in no way categorize that as a failure. 100% not a failure. However, we didn't sell as many tickets as we did the first time we did it.
Yes.
So it's not the perfect example. However, don't get me wrong. There is still, even though it was technically a success, there is still that little voice that pops up in my head, still
Every
in those
event
moments.
I have.
Right.
Yes.
And the moment where I call you too, and I'm like, should I make a coupon code? Should I give them $5 off so they can come, so we get more people? Like you have that overwhelmed moment, that anxious moment where you're trying to and there's that chasing that comes in too. That also isn't always ideal for a business because you don't want to be like, that's that anxious attachment energy. Like that's like, you don't want to be like scrounging for clients and like,
they'll feel that energy too.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
No, that's not what you want.
No
you want
way.
people who want you. You want, from either, business coaching clients or self-care coaching clients. Like, you believe me, it won't work if they're not really like drawn to you. Then your offering might as well be like, I'm gonna like scribble something on a piece of paper and hand it to you, like, because it's not gonna click.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, from my own personal services and offering, they won't feel safe with me. If you don't feel safe with me, this won't work.
Yeah, that's
right.
like...
And that's the one thing that all my clients always say, it's like the number one piece of like what the experience is. I just feel so safe here. And I'm like, well, that's healing in itself.
I feel like your energy, and like you said in the beginning, that how you're just an open book and, you love to talk. And with those two things combined, I feel like that's why I feel safe with you, is because you're so willing to be open. Why wouldn't I want to also be open?
Yeah.
And that's so important, especially with what you do. And thank you for being that way, because I feel like this world needs more of people like that.
Agreed. I mean, like, I will say that the work, like I do the same work that I'm teaching, right? And the more I do that work, the weirder I get. Or I should say, let's put a step in there, right? Like the more I do the work, the more authentic I become, the more authentically I live outwardly in the world, the weirder I get.
Yep.
Like session, I literally just did a thing. Like I talk with my hands as it is, right? But it's like so much more prominent nowadays. And I will like address something that's like, because I see things. I don't know whether it's just my, being in my body, or whether it's my ADHD, or whether it's like fucking clairvoyant. I have no idea what the hell it is, but I see, like when I'm hearing you, I see it. And when I'm talking, I see it. So I'll like gesture to something. And like my client will be like, or whoever will be like,
looking around like, what did she just...
And I go, Sam, you're getting so weird. But then I just like, I'm into it. But the point I'm trying to make is, you want to be able to present in this world authentically. Doesn't that feel better? Can we just like stop playing games? And the more you'll sense and feel imposter syndrome, because you're trying to be somebody that you're not. And it's just going to feel icky to you. It's going to be cringy on the other side of the conversation. If it feels cringy, then feel the cringe. Feel it. and learn from it because it
Learn
ain't
from
working.
it. Yeah. I think too, like almost it what you think about like what other people expect you to be, and that imposter syndrome can come into play. And if you're not healing or healed or going through that process, you don't even know who you are. So how could you be authentic where, if you know who you are and you're coming through authentically, I think that really helps with imposter syndrome because you're a bad bitch, or you know what I mean? Like, you can think that for a second, but then come back to it and be like, oh no, that's not true. And to get through that, my saving grace was Rachel Hollis. I'll probably mention her a million times on this podcast because I absolutely love her. And she is the person who helped me get through this imposter syndrome phase of mine when I first started my business. And I just worked through it. And I just took it on and I said, you know what? Like, this story that I'm telling myself, this untrue story is untrue. It's not true. I'm telling myself that I'm not worthy. I'm not smart enough. I'm incapable. But if I turn around and I look at everything that I have already accomplished, says otherwise.
There's evidence
There's
to
literal
evidence
that
to
this is not
counter
true.
this thought.
Yes.
And that is where, so your thoughts
Get into it, girl.
are not truths.
Yeah.
Please, it would be so much easier. If we could just believe it all. So your thoughts are essentially belief systems, or they are working in conjunction with belief systems. So you do. You have the opportunity. You have the free will to question even your own bullshit.
Yep.
And as you should. Because those belief systems are taught to you. They're not in you. They're taught to you but socialized into you and programmed into you and conditioned into you. We have to start questioning shit, especially now.
Yep.
I know a lot of you are listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, like, especially now. And so, oh my God. So this is like perfect segue because Rachel Hollis was like also a huge like dipping my toes into personal development for me too. And the reason that happened, and there were so many things that happened during that really tough time where like I lost my job and I became a mom, but I don't regret any of it because one of the things that happened was I started a wine tasting business, and part of that business and part of that company was like offering you personal development stuff so that you could like grow your business. And it was like my first taste of entrepreneurship and also personal development, if you could believe it or not. So yeah, Rachel Hollis, girl, wash your face. Mean it, and yeah, it's pretty much a mindset approach to things. There's not a lot of somatic awareness going on in Rachel Hollis world, but absolutely like giving yourself that moment, because even when you pull up your bootstraps or whatever or wash your face, and just do the thing and, look around you and feel worthy and like do the thing so that, again, you can prove to yourself that like, not only does this evidence say that I'm a badass bitch, but, I'm going to prove to myself that I actually am enough by doing it, not by listening to the belief systems, not by listening to the thoughts. The thoughts are on repeat from your voices of authority that you grew up with. They're just on repeat. But also, if you get geeky about it, the thoughts are up in the brain. Not that your brain isn't important. Like, we can't be like, oh, don't listen to, like, it's all connected.
Yes.
Mind and body, all connected. The thing is that we live in our head mostly, and that's no surprise. Like, just kind of, we've had to evolve into that based on how I feel like society has evolved. We've had to do that.
Yeah.
And if you're living in a patriarchal society where it's very black and white and dualistic thinking, all or nothing, good or bad, period, end of story. Like, this is success, this is not success. This is a failure, this is a success. Like, If we're living there, that is where this type of thinking comes in, because it's all based on like a real running, like a memory. So it's going to be based off of what belief systems were passed on to you. And it does go off of memory. So of course, if you did try something and you failed at it, for example, or other types of like sort of even traumatic experiences where, you know, say there's a traumatic car accident and now you can't step into the street. It's going off of memory, not only in your head, but in your body. So it's not like that doesn't exist. Like, you know, that's a real thing that we can listen to, but it doesn't determine what's going to happen in this situation. It technically doesn't have to do anything with what's happening right now in this moment.
Yeah.
That's the past. This is now. So it's tough because it's not like it's not important. But the other geeky thing that I'll throw out there is that when you come back to the nervous system talk, right? We have this really amazing piece of our body called the vagus nerve. And it's a massive part of our nervous system. It runs from your gut all the way up to your brainstem. And it's I don't like that phrase supposed to, but for all intents and purposes, the communication between the brain and the gut, like your body, the body and the brain, right, is supposed to be 80-20. 80% communication bottom up, and 20% top down. How many of you can say that you know, kind of operate 80% like from your gut and from what feels good and like what the sensation says yes, the vibe says yes, right? How many of you can say, I can't even say that it's 80% at this point, right? I have my good and bad days.
Yeah.
But so just leaving that bit of geekdom on the side for a moment, just noticing that, like, we're not supposed to be up here 80% of the time. We're supposed to be up in here 80% of the time. So that's what I'm trying to guide people to do, is just notice. It's like the new mindfulness.
Yeah.
Notice your internal experience and live from that. You know, it doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to start like cutting people off who make you feel a certain way, like, you know, or what, you know, like there's a way of doing this, but yeah. So, my point was with that you don't have to be, giving all of your power to the brain, all of the power to the mind stuff. Even in yoga, 8,000-year-old practice, whatever it is, has a Sanskrit word for those anxieties, which actually, even when it translates to mind stuff. I think it's so
mind stuff.
funny sometimes, this shit. I love it. But it's like the vrittis. That's the Sanskrit word. It's vrittis. Mind stuff. And when you translate like yoga sutras, like the threads by which we should live by, you translate it and it's literally like coming into the present moment so that we can get away from that mind stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's how it translates.
I love that.
An 8,000-year-old practice. Like, this is what we're trying to do. So that's why they say, you know, yoga was the OG of somatics. Yeah, 100% it was. And here we are.
I didn't know that so much goes into yoga.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's so much teaching.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
People realize that there's a physical practice to yoga, right? The movement, you know, it's a moving meditation, movement linked to breath. Obviously a practice that is somatic in nature already, right? Mm-hmm. So the physical practice or the asana is 100% super important. But there's yoga philosophy, there's like a spiritual teaching. There are 8 limbs of yoga. There are 8 limbs. And so 3 of them, like we know about 3 of them mostly, or, you know, they're more prominently discussed, which would be asana, the physical practice, pratyahara, which is like meditation, which doesn't have to be like, it does not have to be that. That's like, when you're in the zone, like when you're in flow, right? Which is why somatics involves, right? Like, which is why somatics, like, you're going to see now, especially if you're listening to this, it's going to start to come up everywhere. You're going to say, but there's somatic movement, somatic dance, art therapy that's somatic in nature, because it's anything to get you into that flow state, right? So that's pratyahara. And then pranayama is the breath, prana, energy, breath. So most of us know about those 3 limbs.
Yeah.
There's 8. I'm not
That's
going to
so
get into
cool.
them right now.
I'm going to
Would
go
take
home
us
and
too
like
long.
research this. I swear. When I did my like first somatic movement with you, like class, I just loved it so much because I felt almost like it, like you leave there with just less weight.
I can't tell you how many students that have said the same thing have said, I feel fucking 5 pounds lighter
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And I'm like, uh-huh. And obviously in one session, that's not actual weight. That's heaviness.
Yeah, that you're holding.
That's what you're holding.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just one session, you feel that weight come off. And I recently contacted you. I was like, I want more.
Yeah.
Like
let's do that again.
Yeah, let's do that again. I like, so if you guys listening have somebody around you, or can you let us know actually how people can reach out to you and do this, because I encourage everyone to at least try it one time and experience this way of releasing.
Yeah. So yeah, my website is www.alignedheart.net. So all of my offerings are there. If you go to offerings, there will be classes, but then there will also be sessions that you can book with me. So I do offer a free discovery call as far as somatic coaching. So if that's like, if like your lights are going off listening to this, for that, as far as like releasing old past traumas, getting more in touch with your emotions, improving your relationships, healing your nervous system, building that room for that pause between like response and reaction, living more intentionally, right? Because we have that ability to like decipher, like, how do I want to move forward, right?
Instead, and we were just talking about this before we started recording. You have to be intentional, or else you will conjure up some bullshit.
Right. You will manifest based on those limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And based on like your not enoughness. Like that's what you will draw in.
That's what you're going to attract. And we don't want that.
No, like you want it to be authentically you, right? And so like, obviously when it comes to impacting any real type of life change, this type of work can help with that. But I think that the majority of my clients want to, like I said, improve your relationships, just improve regulation, right? Because they're suffering from symptoms like anxiety or pain or depression, or even like things like gut malfunction or hormone stuff, right? Not that I claim to medically treat hormones, for example. Like I definitely do not do that. But your nervous system informs every other system in your body, whether you are safe or in danger. So if you have autoimmune, like I do, I don't like to say have, right? But like if you struggle with autoimmune symptoms, hello, that is your immune system over functioning. Your immune system is coming to defense of, fill in the blank, but the defense is overactive and now it's attacking your own body. So these are the ways in which nervous system healing can help. So there's a discovery call that you can schedule with me just to like talk about, obviously get to know each other, but like, I just want to know what your goals are.
Yeah.
Right. So that we can like set some intentions and see if we're a good fit. But I also host 5 weekly yoga classes. And if you have seen the ads lately, the marketing about somatic yoga, right?
Yes.
Like I figured it might be a good like thing to mention. There's also like somatic yoga for weight loss, somatic yoga for cortisol detox. Like these are all somewhat redundant in verbiage. And the reason is because, like we said, like the physical practice of yoga is somatic in nature already. It's a little bit redundant. However, I would say that with the right teacher, your yoga practice can be have a distinct focus on drawing your attention to your internal experience the whole time. So that way you're practicing that as you practice movement linked to breath, which is already healing to your nervous system.
I do have to say, I notice a difference between each teacher that I have practiced yoga with about how you're feeling during and after. There is a difference. And when you are working on the somatic part, and obviously it is like combined with yoga, but when you're focusing on it, I really feel that there is a big difference.
Yeah.
And what is it called at the end of yoga when you're like laying there?
Shavasana.
Oh my God, it's my favorite.
Resting pose, corpse pose.
Favorite.
If you want to be
favorite
morbid.
thing.
I know. Everybody's.
And you are so good at leading it. Oh my gosh. And I feel like that, like without it, okay, like I've lost 5 pounds of weight just doing these movements, but then I lose another 5 because of the way that you lead through this moment of feeling safe. And then the words you use are just like, everything is just like flowing out of you. And it's so beautiful. If you guys can make it to one of her sessions, which you can also do virtually, by the way.
Correct.
Signing up and doing it virtually, I encourage everyone to please try it. It's phenomenal.
Yay.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Sam.
you for saying it, because as you know, I just want to normalize that, right? Like, it's not like I don't have moments where I'm even specifically in those moments, like in the Shavasana, right? Like often I will guide it similarly with each class. And then I'll go to myself, somebody eventually is going to like wonder why I keep repeating the same thing. I'm like, because it works.
It works.
But, it's good you always want to get that, positive reinforcement and feedback. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. And thank you for coming to this world as authentic as you possibly can.
That's what we got to do.
And coming here with your authentic self. And I just really appreciate your time and all of your knowledge and bringing it here for all of our listeners. So
thank you for having me.
That's for today, guys. And thank you for joining us and listening. Thanks for being here with me today. It's always appreciated if you would like, share, or drop a comment about what you think. And of course, remember to do what the fuck you want, because you deserve it. See you next time. As always, sending love and positive vibes.